here at the North Canton Planning Commission meeting. It is June 3rd, 2026 at 6 p.m. First thing on the agenda is a roll call.
Mr. Dalpace?
Here.
Mr. Mahousen?
Here.
Mr. Sarah?
Here.
Mr. LePage?
Here.
Mr. Reed?
Okay, next on the agenda is our minutes for consideration. This would be submitting the February 4th, 2026 meeting minutes for approval. Not sure if there's any comments on there.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I would second.
I'll second.
We'll do a roll call on this.
Mr. Mahousen?
Yes.
Mr. Dalpace?
Yes.
Mr. Sarah?
Yes.
Mr. LePage?
Yes.
All right, next on the agenda tonight is a public hearing. This would be for ordinance 16-2026. This is an ordinance repealing chapter 1139 industrial district regulations and amending various provisions of chapter 1137 business district regulations of the codified ordinances of the city of North Canton to update, modify, and clarify the regulations governing the city's business districts. Okay. At this time, I'm not sure who from the administration would like to present first.
Marty wants to kick it off, or?
Marty, do you want to kick us off?
Yes, thank you. This was a culmination of efforts between Liam, myself, and Jason. With that said, Liam did a bulk of the heavy lifting. He did a very good job. It's very well put together. Liam also has a couple other documents here that will help guide us through the various changes on that. With that, Liam, if you want to take it from here.
Yeah, there is the red line that was provided to you guys. It's up on the screen. I believe they provided it to you separately as well. That's just all of the changes that are going through. I'll just kind of run through a quick summary of the proposed changes. One of the major components is the establishment of the neighborhood business zoning designation. So the neighborhood business districts are defined as environments that are conducive to well-located and designed offices and limited business service activity that provides service to the community while protecting the adjacent residential neighborhoods by regulating the usage that would reduce any congestion, noise, or other objectionable influences. So, think doctor's offices, dentistry, things that are light use, and then typically beyond 9 to 5 aren't going to be active, so there's not going to be anybody coming to and from. No overnight storage of like heavy equipment or anything, so no big landscaper or something that's going to want to leave heavy equipment that generates noise, especially if they would be coming back from a job or something like that. It's all going to be basically just offices, accounting firms, those types of businesses that are adjacent to houses without creating an undue burden. And then this is intended to be a stopgap between the more permissive GBA or GBB business designations that the city already has and protect those residential districts. So there's a few businesses throughout the city that are pretty adjacent to residential properties that would be otherwise zoned as GBA or GBB. Those can allow for some heavier uses, including equipment, all-hour operations, just kind of depending on what those businesses may be. This is a bit more limited use that would dial it back into that very subdued, typical 9 to 5 office kind of thing. Some of the other changes. Some additional regulations for limited industrial zoning district. So chapter 1139, the industrial district regulations is a largely vestigial section of the code. There is one block of parcels in the city that has the LI designation, and that would be the Diebold complex. We don't anticipate there being any other significant industrial uses, which with the industrial districts, there was an additional designation, the general industrial district, which was for larger industrial uses, a little bit heavier manufacturing, those kind of facilities. We don't have any anymore. We are not going to get any, presumably. So having the GI designation is just, kind of moot We don't have a purpose for it anymore, so we wanted to get rid of that, which would just leave LI as its own, in its own chapter, so we wanted to combine that with the existing business district regulations, just to put all commercial activity in a single chapter. Both administration permits, city council's initial comments were, all in line that this makes more sense to just combine everything into one chapter. Additional points, there's some expanded language across various provisions of the chapter just to increase some clarity, specifically with the appeal requirements, letting that go, any determination from either the Development Services Department or the Planning Commission to be appealed to the ZBOA, which does align with the ZBOA's charter defined authority. They oversee all appeals of any determination from the development side of things. So that just kind of cleared that up. Establishing a procedure for uses not listed in the schedule of permitted uses. So within the chapter is a pretty long list of all the different types of businesses, where they may or may not be located depending on their zoning designations. This gives the Director of Permits and the Planning Commission a bit more authority to establish a designation for something that may be outside of that schedule, just so that we can be a little bit more agile. So if a certain business wants to come in that we don't have a designation for, then we can do that without having to make a significant amendment to this code. This process, similar to those designations, would be a multi-month process that would stop up a business from coming into the city. So giving you guys a little bit more ability to be more nimble with those designations. It also modifies the schedule of permitted uses to add those neighborhood business district and limited industrial uses into that schedule of permitted uses. That's more of a formatting thing than anything, but it's just important to note. Additionally, and this would be a bit more consequential, is the prohibition of cannabis-related businesses, which is pursuant to Chapter 513 of the Codified Ordinances of the City, and also establish some regulations of smoke shops, which would be your more traditional tobacco, nicotine type businesses. We established smoke shops as any retail establishment whose primary use is related to the sale of products relating to non-tobacco nicotine, so your vapes and others, oils and things like that. CBD, kratom, or hemp-derived or synthetic cannabinoids, your Delta 8s, Delta 9s. So prohibiting that from being the primary use of a business, which is either 33% or more of a particular business's stock in trade, or that those products occupy more than 33% of the shop's floor area. This will not prohibit the sale of products relating to the usage of traditional tobacco, so cigarettes, cigars. So like if a cigar shop wanted to open up a business, that would be perfectly fine. It's just to kind of rein in the less understood types of businesses, the vape shops and things of that nature. Some other regulations, adjusting height regulations to be consistent with the nature of each district's commercial activity. So putting them all in one chapter, your GBA and GBB is not going to have the same type of business as an LI that might be a much larger, taller facility. So it's just kind of shoring up the regulations for that. We built in the drive-through and pickup window standards that we'd previously put forward. That would have been a year or two ago. This was just a when in Rome kind of thing. If we're already in here making changes, let's just shore it up and align everything across the board. And that's about it.
Could I add maybe just one or two things for context?
Sure.
So I'll be brief because Liam ran through a lot of stuff and I wanted to give you guys time to react, but Liam did a good job of describing the what. I wanted to just talk briefly about the why, like why is there all this red all over this markup? There's really, I think, two main reasons. So for context, we've got two commercial parts of the code. We have Main Street, I'll just call it Main Street and then everything else. And so Main Street, not too long ago, we had done a lot of work on the Main Street districts, but it had been some time before what I'll just call everything else in terms of commercial was looked at. So a lot of what's in that red line that Liam didn't discuss, I would categorize it more as kind of housekeeping. Just looking, it's been a long time since we went through these business districts and the industrial district we had, so a lot of those language changes, or we're looking for consistencies or inconsistencies, maybe wording things differently, kind of modernizing it. The second reason I think that we wanted to take a fresh look at this, really was more from, are there more significant things that maybe there's gaps or things missing? And that's a lot of what Liam just ran through. Like he said, by far, I think the most consequential changes are taking a look at the smoke shops. And so, like Liam said, if it's a traditional tobacco business, that's not really changing. But if it's a business that, given those percentages he mentioned, the 33% where it falls, I'll just call them non-traditional smoke shops. I guess they're getting more traditional with each passing year, but where they're more the cannabinoids or the CBD or the other non-tobacco stuff, a lot of communities around us have gotten into situations where they've let those businesses proliferate, and then they're in a situation where they've got, 4 of them close to one another. We wanted to be a little proactive and say, like, maybe before that happens here in North Canton, we want to regulate those businesses more. Looking down the road, we felt like if this was well received by the planning commission and the city council in terms of those smoke shops, that might be something that we would consider, proposing changes to Main Street as well. But we thought we would start here with that. So I know we talked a lot, so I'm gonna stop now and,
That's
let you
fine.
guys, take the meeting back.
All the knowledge behind it is helpful, so.
One other thing I would like to mention is that as a part of all these changes, especially with establishing the neighborhood business, is no parcel will be forcibly rezoned. So this is purely textual for right now. We're not gonna force anybody in the neighborhood business or any other designation for that matter. It'll just be as new things develop, we'll be able to use that designation if people would want it, or if it would be the best case for the area.
And like Liam said, the rationale behind that neighborhood, that's a bigger change to that neighborhood business district was more, we're kind of on our commercial regulations, it's almost feast or famine. We either have these really big general business districts like Washington Square, or some of the properties along Whipple and so forth. Or there's residential. We thought there might be a place in our code to have something that would allow smaller clusters of, office, low intensity, retail, doctor's offices, things like that. But like Liam said, we're not proposing rezoning anything right now. We just wanted to create a category that down the road, there might be some ability to have a transition between purely residential and, big square footage retail and other uses.
Okay. Anyone else from administration comments at
Just,
this time?
talking about the drive-through windows and that just saves you guys time with all the ones coming through for variances, because we have been granting those, and it seems to be the norm.
Right.
2 windows were, different, and now everybody wants them.
Mhm.
So it's a good cleanup there, time saving.
I can't possibly add to anything that they just said, so.
Okay, well, thank you. All right. Questions from planning commission members? I know Mr. Sarah has some, I have some. Do you want to work down the line? Go right ahead, you can start.
On the cannabis, businesses, I think you said there are some existing that I can think of at least 2 or 3 that exist right now.
So for traditional cannabis, it is outlawed under, was it chapter 513? So the businesses like dispensaries and stuff are already prohibited. The places that sell CBD and Delta 8 would be grandfathered in under any new changes. So any of those businesses, now provided they want to expand their operations, they cannot exceed that 33%. Once they would try to expand past that, it's a prohibited use.
That was my question. I assume they'd be grandfathered, but I'm pleased with that provision being added, proposed to be added.
Mr. Mahausen?
I've read the proposed modifications. I don't take any issue with any of them. I think they're good changes for the benefit of the residents of North Canton. But I'd like to hear others.
Mr. Sarah?
How many hours do we have?
Off the limit, you answer.
That's not a good way to start.
So I got quite a few questions for you. I actually, I don't want to sound negative, but I am concerned of these changes. And it's more than just saying the GI is debold. The GI needs to be, there could be other buildings other than debold in that
LI,
complex.
right?
Yeah, the LI does.
LI, you're saying.
Or,
LI.
I'm sorry, LI,
Okay.
GI, LI. So, you know, I think that's a misstatement. But back in April of 2021, we did a special planning committee meeting that was quite extensive and involved quite a lot of research. And that kind of set up and established the Main Street, North Gateway and South and everything else. So I was involved in that, and I think that was really
Needed.
needed, yeah. And I think where you're taking it is needed and needs to be tuned up. But if I go back and I look at what you're proposing, and I also am in agreement of taking the chapter 1137 business district and the chapter 1139 industrial district and basically combining it into this. So I think that's a very good move. I am concerned that we are going from 5 districts to 4 districts as you're proposing. You know, with the neighborhood business district, the general GBA, GBB, and the LI. So, I mean, the reason it was set up for 5 districts originally was intentional, and you're taking it to 4 districts. I'm going to add a little side note. I know we're focusing always on the Main Street. I don't know why we're not focusing on other major streets going into North Canton, like Apple Grove and Maple. And I think it would be nice because we do have commercial buildings and office buildings on those stretch. And I think it'd be nice to see this once and for all encapsulated into one business district area. But when you look at your scheduled permitted uses, you call out in the NB, you call out multifamily residential and live work units as UF. What's UF?
Upper floor.
Yeah, so it'd be the upper floor. Marty, if you want to speak to that point.
I couldn't find it.
Sorry, I was trying to get off mute there. Yeah, that was a carryover from the Main Street district where we picked up the upper floor and lower floor. So that's getting into the mixed use. So with UF, that's the multifamily would be anything above that first floor. So we're more promoting that lower floor to be the commercial type uses, professional offices, retail, those types of things. Any other primary use that's listed in that table of permitted uses.
That makes sense. I just didn't know what it stood for. Some of the other things, and I'm just gonna go through it and tell you my comment. You list, flagpoles, and you reference the section, when you go to it, limits it to 15 feet. I don't know, I know what you're going for, you don't wanna have this 50-foot tall flagpole, but, I do like flags myself. So, I think 15 feet is something kind of short. In your schedule 1137.04, the minimum lot requirements, you don't show the NB district. So you got OB, GBA, and GBD, but there's no NB. Or LI, as far as that goes. In your height restrictions, you're saying 50 feet is the tallest height in the LI. Before, I think it was only 40 feet. So I don't know why we went from 40 to 50.
I was just looking.
It was
at that.
35.
35, was it?
Yeah. Previously, it was 35, and then it stated you could
Except otherwise specified.
conditional use if you went over 35.
In the section 1137.13, you references dumpsters and waste receptacle screenings, saying that it's required. There's a lot of businesses in this that do not have it. So I get it, but you made a comment that this is not going to be being enforced, but you also said for now.
For now.
So gotta watch your words.
Yeah. I mean, it would be a,
So
prior permitted use. And I'll just shed light on that too, like where that comes from is we do have a lot of complaints with that now. So if we can go forward to not have that, as we have so much commercial mixed in with residential, there are people that the back of your business is the side lot to their, backyard, and they're looking at all the trash. They're trying to enjoy their backyard and they're looking over and they're seeing all that, get more screening.
Mm-hmm.
We can coexist better together.
it references the business district, but I didn't notice any revised zoning map. So I don't know if that's been created, but if I'm gonna.
So the zoning map wouldn't change because no parcels are being rezoned. So currently, if this was adopted, there would be no existing neighborhood business parcel. So there's nothing to include on the map. Until somebody ultimately changes designations, the neighborhood business would not appear on any zoning map.
Right, like a property owner might come to us, for example, and say, I'd like to be rezoned as neighborhood business, and we'd have a code section then that would allow them to at least pursue that, but like Liam said, that's a good point. None of this is proposing any changes to the existing zoning map. It would stay as is. This is purely text changes to the code.
But you're already adding an NB.
To the list of available designations, there's just nobody currently zoned that way. Similarly, on this map, I don't believe GI is represented anywhere just because we don't have anybody zoned as GI, though it is currently an existing designation under our code.
Should we have that, we would then amend the map.
Correct.
That's my comments.
That was quick.
Yes, I made it clear.
Scared us in the
I
beginning,
know,
Tom.
you set that up for an hour.
Good setup though.
I might take an hour. It's okay.
Way to go, Eric.
Well, number one, my question was, one of my questions was the map. So the map is not changing. You're
Correct.
creating the designation for in the future, if a property owner wanted to change them, or in the future, the zoning map could be changed like it has in the past.
Yes.
And I appreciate the intent of this, of creating something to step down between the residential and our current business districts. Because as you mentioned, there definitely are scenarios where that could be a problem, right? So I do appreciate the intent here to try to scale it down as we move towards the business items. First, the procedure for something that is not in the schedule of permitted uses. So I'm looking at your summary, and I didn't highlight the exact text in there, but it says, the director of permits / planning commission may determine a given use's compatibility with the code / business district and issue a determination. So I guess my question is, currently, if somebody comes in and they meet all the requirements, let's say they're coming in for GBA, or let's just say the new designation, NB. They come in and they meet all the requirements for, let's say, screening, building size, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Typically, now in our code, that at that point, the director of permits could just say, okay, you're good to go, you can move forward. It doesn't have to rise to planning commission. If they don't fit in the schedule, are we saying if they meet all the requirements of NB, then the director of permits has the authority to put them in a certain category? I'm just trying to understand what would determine that the director of permits allowed, but how would it come to planning commission? Because I don't think that's clear.
Well,
I think that's a good question
yeah,
for
the
Marty.
director of permits is on the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the intent here was similar to how we handle the development review, is if the proposed use was something that was similar to the listed uses in the table, then that would stay at the level of the director of permits on that. Conversely, if it was something that maybe didn't quite fit or might have some adverse impact to the community, then that would be escalated to planning commission, or even as a level of appeal, even if let's say a use does come in and it might seem to someone that it should be permitted as part of the table, they would have that level of appeal to go to planning commission and get their review of it, more thorough review with more of the members.
Right. So I guess my question is, that would be appealed if it goes to planning commission and gets denied, then they could appeal it to ZBOA, right? But if the director of permits just approved it, the neighbor wouldn't be able to appeal that approval. Do you know what I'm saying?
They could appeal an approval as well to the ZBOA, yes.
Okay. I'm just trying to think of something. Something doesn't fit in here. It's a real issue. The director of permits misses it, thinks it's okay, but a neighbor doesn't. Then what's the remedy, right? And I don't know if it's just not clear enough. I'm just kind of speaking this out there. Like, how could we make that more protective for a neighbor effectively? Right? Because a lot of people don't know what happens here, right? They aren't paying attention to it. Even if they get a letter, it goes in the trash, right? Oh, whatever. They're busy. Everyone's busy. They get an email, whatever. So my concern is if something didn't fit and the director of permit, I'm not saying Marty would do this, but I'm saying in the future, 50 years from now, somebody just rams something through. What's the process of remedying that? If it doesn't fit in here, it's almost like if it doesn't fit in here, and I don't know. I just feel like,
You think some wording, that the neighbor would have the, ability to appeal?
yeah, something. I don't
Okay.
know.
Do you have that? Maybe add that in there.
So that language lives in the zoning board of appeals part of
Okay.
the code, where any aggrieved person can appeal that, and I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah. Yeah.
The challenge is anything that gets that administrative level of review, there are no notices sent out.
Right.
Unfortunately,
That's
that aggrieved person wouldn't know about it till it's too late anyway. So
That-
that gets to be the balance here
Yeah.
of where do we facilitate business, but also protect the neighbors as well.
correct. Yeah, that's my concern. Yeah. Okay. I don't want to beat this to death here. I just want to bring it up, and I feel like that might need some investigation, I guess. Maybe even how other places are handling those situations in their zoning code.
We could take a closer look at that
Yeah.
text and
Right,
think about
that's-
some
Yeah.
scenarios like you mentioned and see if there's a better way to write that.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's
and
just
see
my
what other
concern,
people
because I could
do.
see something happening where someone doesn't even know that it happens in that scenario. Right.
And you have 30-day, window on the appeal
Right. Okay.
that starts from,
From a procedural standpoint, I don't know how that would necessarily even function.
Yeah.
As far as those determinations issued, because we obviously don't send out notices to every resident or even in a particular area unless it's appearing before a board.
Yeah.
If it's something that's just in administrative authority, I don't know that that's something that would even be remedied by a change in this code without some sort of notice being sent to everybody regardless of situation.
Right.
So I don't necessarily know that a change in this legislation as written would solve that problem, just given that it's more of a procedural and
Mm-hmm.
timing thing. Generally, those larger projects, especially things that may be outside of the scope of the law, are gonna appear before you guys anyways, which would be the time to say, you know, maybe it's a zoning designation in and of itself of, yeah, you're applying for NB, but you really belong in a GBA.
Yeah.
So we might go with that designation, or that doesn't fit and we address it from there. As far as the code itself, I don't necessarily know that we can solve that with this.
Yeah. Okay.
And I appreciate the question about the schedule of uses, cause those are tough in any zoning code.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys
Well,
know
I wanted
that
to run down through
as
some
well
of
as
them,
me,
because it is tough.
you can't really cover every possible
No.
use, but there are ones that conform more closely with
Sure.
the
Yeah.
intent of the code and then those that don't.
Yeah. So, I just want to run down some of those I have highlighted here just real quickly. So, Mr. Sarah brought up the multifamily residential, the UF, so upper floor. And I've always wondered this about even in Main Street districts. I love the intent of having the mixed use, love it. Great idea. My question when it comes to the multifamily is like, what about a brownstone type unit? So you could have a multifamily, but you enter on the first floor and it's 2 floors, or it's 3 floors. Currently, that just says upper floor only, so that would be, they would have to go to BZOA on that. Should that be like upper floor but / conditional if you want it on the first floor?
I can give you, I guess, my personal opinion on that and then invite everybody else. I think that is a very good idea. I mean, I can just tell you, maybe this is a foreshadowing of things we might bring to you in the future.
Yeah.
I've talked to a lot of developers, and I'll use Main Street as an example. Everyone says, wow, that's a great intent to have mixed use. I'll never build just apartments on the upper floor
Right.
because they just can't make the numbers work. They'll say,
Sure.
well, I'm limited to 7 units and why would I, so they'll tell me, I'm just gonna do retail on Main Street. And then they'll say, which is a good point, and I think this is where it's maybe applicable to what you're saying here, Eric, and maybe we've improve it here and then consider doing it on Main Street, they'll say, well, why can't I just have horizontal mixed use? Like, what's the difference if there's a standalone brownstone building right next to the laundromat? Why does your code only, it forces me to either build apartments above
Yep.
it or not have them at all? And I have to admit, I think that's a very compelling
Right.
argument, and I think, again, this is my personal opinion, I think the city would be just as well served by having an apartment next door to a retail business than as it would, even though it maybe looks cooler or is more
Yeah.
ideal to have it upstairs. So, yeah, I mean, from my personal standpoint, I think having provision, if they say, can I have first floor retail right here? Can't there at least be a process to
Yeah,
allow
that's what I
that?
was thinking, the process,
that's
this just
good.
denies it, you know,
Yeah.
having something in there that allows that. Cause someone could, you know, I just think of other cities similar where they have houses downtown, the city grows, retail and other things grow. Nobody wants a single family next to a downtown core usually. But a lot of people want to live in a multi-unit in a downtown core, right? And those might be, like you said, it's hard, sometimes it's hard to do the retail on the first floor. Sometimes it works better to buy 3 of those houses, create brownstones. They're for sale, it's not an apartment. Now you have 3 units, like, you know what I'm saying? I
Mhm.
mean, there's just gives you more options, I guess. So that's one of them, you know, should that be conditional for the first floor instead of just not permitted? The same with live work units. I mean, if we're saying we want commercial on the first floor, maybe that's conditional as well. Like, you could have a live work unit that enters on the first floor. You walk in, offices on the first floor, residential on the second floor. It's a live work unit.
And maybe particularly, I know we don't have anything zoned that yet, but in those neighborhood
Right.
business districts where you're already
Exactly.
closer to residential and, yeah.
Yeah.
Are you trying to do that in the GBA and GBB?
I don't know. That's up for debate. I'm saying it seems like it would make sense. The multifamily could make sense in all of them. The live work might only make sense in NB, right? Yeah, you know, I think we'd have to just use this discretion about when you think about it, I guess, and walk through the scenarios. And then in office and professional service, we have experimental testing and research facilities. And then the 2 items down for that, research and testing laboratory. I guess I don't see the difference between those two. Someone could say a testing facility is a lab just as easily. I don't know if, I'm not sure. It probably was carryover from other stuff, but I just don't see the difference. But they do have different permissives. So experimental testing and research facility is not permitted in any, but a research and testing lab is permitted in GBB and LI.
I would punt that designation to Marty.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there's gotta be something in the code that he knows of that we don't.
That was a carryover from one of those previous codes.
Okay. I mean, I could see those being conditional, I guess, on the 2 bigger uses. I don't know. That's just,
That is,
I feel like those should just be combined because I can't determine
I
it.
just think maybe the word lab
I-
has something to do with it.
yeah, we could research farther where that came from, Eric, to your point.
Yeah.
And I guess just as I sit here now, not remembering all the backstory,
Yeah.
my inclination would be to recommend to definitely combine those.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense.
Well, and I think, you know, when you start saying experimental testing, okay, what is that? Like, what's a drone facility? You could have a small drone company that fits in NB. It's 4 guys in a small office, right? So do you want to say not permitted for that, or do you want to say conditional to give somebody a chance? Like, hey, I'd like to put this here.
Yeah.
I can't go buy 20,000 square feet up the road. I got to start somewhere. So just, I don't, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
Hospital and associated medical offices, and then we have offices including administrative, medical, business, and professional. So I kind of understand this. The intent is to say, okay, if you're building a hospital and all the associated offices, but then down below we say medical offices again. That's kind of confusing because most hospitals build a hospital and then they take a separate parcel and they make offices. So if our intent is to try to corral that into one line with permitted, not permitted, they could easily say, oh no, we're down here, this is a separate medical office.
I think the difference in that is more like, for the hospital's sake, inpatient versus the smaller outpatient care
Okay.
versus your general practitioners and dentists.
Yeah,
Two very different types of
Right.
uses that are both still medical offices. So I think that that would be more of a director of permits, planning commission designation of, depending on what type of facility they're seeking, would change how we
Yeah.
would want to classify that.
okay.
And it is a good question, cause to build on what Liam said, my sense is it was also to do with scale, you know,
Yeah.
kind of, but you're right, that there's nothing really says that.
Mhm.
And I could see how that is confusing, and I think that's another one we could look at and see if we can shore that up a little and make it more,
I'm looking
more
at it.
clear.
I'm looking at it as someone trying to get around to
Yeah.
get in the less permissive.
I think that's a
area.
good way to, I mean, 'cause
Yeah.
that's what people will do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct. So then next would be essential services. So I'm not sure what the definition of this is. I believe it's meant to be public utility and like civic infrastructure. And that's permitted across well, it's permitted, and then strangely, it's not permitted in LI, which I would think it would be permitted there because we're already in an industrial space. But example, a substation, would a substation want to be right? Like, if you're allowing a substation in NP and NB, that could be literally sitting next to somebody's house.
There are substations now.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying now, but do we want to avoid that moving forward? I don't know. I'm just curious on the definition of essential services, where that starts and stops. But the same thing for like, I guess currently I know that civic infrastructure in our current code is all permitted pretty much anywhere. But maybe just defining that clearer, I guess. Drive-through facility. So previously that said in association with use. Should that be still shown on there that way? Or are we saying just any drive-through facility? Because before it was kind of like, oh, if you have this use, you're allowed to have a drive-through, and then you'd be permitted or not permitted with the drive-through, like the drive-through would be permitted or not permitted. I know we've gone down this weird path in the past.
I think with drive-through, that's more of a business type, and Marty, I don't know if you can add any color. In my mind, drive-through facility is anything from like a drive-through convenience store
Okay.
to a Valvoline type business.
Okay, yep.
Versus just a restaurant that has a pickup window.
Okay. And then down library or museum, currently you have that not permitted in NB. I guess I was thinking of the situation of someone's house, they turn it into a museum later. You know,
That's a good point.
a public figure,
Yeah,
right?
it's a historical house.
Historical
something,
house.
yeah.
So I just thought maybe that might be conditional, might be more appropriate for the NB. Because I could see a house becoming NB because a lot next to residential, but then, you know,
That's a
not
good point.
permitted. I guess it would be tough then for someone would have to go through a lot of process, I guess, to get that reversed.
Yeah.
And then dance studios and schools is permitted in NB. I guess I was thinking that might be conditional just from the traffic standpoint, next to a residential spot. And then child daycare center you had is NP not permitted. A lot of people have daycares in their homes. I don't know if that should be a conditional situation or not. Because I could see, again, a house being in the NB district easily. And then gasoline station, we have not permitted in BB, GBB, and LI. I guess I just wondered why, if we're accessory and conditional in A, I mean, I guess if the light industrial use needs a gas station, that isn't too far off of what they already are.
I believe that's another carryover type situation.
Okay, all right.
Eric, can you go back one second? Where was essential services?
When you were talking about like the utility infrastructure, substation and stuff.
Yeah, essential, I just don't understand the definition. I guess maybe we should define the definition of essential services or split it into two different
Okay.
things, like public utilities versus civic infrastructure.
But, we were asking just where was it? in the
Oh, that's
table?
it, under retail services.
Okay,
It's
yeah,
the third,
we were having trouble.
yeah, third
Okay,
one down.
Got
Yeah.
it. I see it now. Yeah.
That
right
might-
after
yeah.
hotel, motel.
And that might go better in one of the other,
I think that's one reason I had trouble finding it,
Yeah.
because I thought it might be in one of the other categories.
it might go better in one of the other categories. I don't know, but yes.
And I did have a second to do a little bit of research about, that we talked about earlier, of the difference between experimental testing and research versus a research and testing laboratory.
Yeah,
So the experimental can be much more R&D, where those things could kind of get a little bit dicier than traditional. So laboratory is going to be a relatively contained usage,
right,
versus something where,
okay.
to your example of drone facility, of what size drone,
Yeah, right,
what type of drone,
yeah,
and actually involves experimental testing and research is more, can include more production type uses,
okay,
rather than the research and testing is more built for like quality control type.
yeah, okay. Yeah, I would just say, probably look at what's permitted versus conditional in those situations, or not permitted versus conditional. I think that's all I have on the table. The only other thing on the table, and I know it's a dirty word, but data centers. There's nothing in here on that. And I would prefer, as a community member, that that be conditional across the board.
I agree.
If you're not gonna, I understand people wanna come out and outright ban it, whatever, that's up to the administration,
But
but
regardless, it should be reviewed.
it should,
Yeah.
I feel like it should be
Right.
reviewed on every level.
Yeah.
Conditional is the way to go.
And what, I'd be just interested in your reactions, what if we did not permit it in any of these except for the limited industrial, and then we
Yeah.
made it conditional in that?
Yeah, whatever, I
I mean,
just
that
feel
would
like
confine
it
it.
needs to be somewhere between not permitted and get reviewed.
Cause I'm
right.
just trying to think of our actual districts in practice, like, would it make sense to have a data center at Washington Square? I would
Right.
argue no.
Sure.
Maybe a small one could make sense
Right.
next to Diebold, back behind Whitwer or something
Sure.
like that, so.
There's limited places where.
Yeah, there's
people go. I
limited
know
places
that-
in our
Yeah, a lot of
community, I'm just
we don't
afraid
have a lot of
like someone could try to slip it in through some other, oh, it's a research and testing
Yeah.
facility,
Right.
wink, wink.
They're getting smaller, but I mean, you'd have to have a decent sized plaza or,
Right,
something like the Uber district or something like that to really make it work,
yeah,
so,
Not really, there's one on Fulton Road.
Yeah.
You never know it was there.
right,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, my point is they generally don't go in high rent places, they usually would go in something that is a little more dense, so. Something, if it was smaller, they would try to build up, so maybe like an office building with a few floors or something like that.
And it- Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'd like it to be reviewed, honestly. I think that way people can present their case either way.
And I was just gonna add, I know it's all in the eye of the beholder, but there's maybe data centers with a small d
correct,
that have been around for a long time that, like Tom said, no one would
Yeah,
ever know was there. And then there's data centers that are being discussed now that are,
Yeah.
behemoths, and I totally understand people's concerns
Yeah.
about those, and
yeah. Yeah, I just feel like it should be reviewed, there should be a spot for it, so that it's clear,
yeah.
this is the process. type
Yeah,
of
cause I don't
situation.
think we'd wanna imply, because they're not mentioned, that, they could go almost anywhere.
Right,
So,
right. Yeah,
this would be the time to mention them.
And
yeah,
to that point, if it's a use not listed, I think that comes down to when they go to submit their plans, if it
sure,
looks like a data center, which is outside of the uses, they're gonna put that to you guys. Which would be a broader discussion of, things outside the schedule of permitted uses. Rather than conditional, leaves it a bit more discretionary to a director of permits. If you wanted to keep that with the planning as a default, having it deliberately not listed in the schedule puts it before you anyways.
Well, there could be a situation, and this has happened in other municipalities, where they've approved it internally, and then they find out at the
Because
last
it's
minute.
specifically not listed. I
Correct.
totally agree.
Yeah,
I think it's smart
correct.
to list it and make it conditional.
Yeah.
I don't see any downside of doing that.
No, that's what I'm
No.
saying. There's no downside.
Yeah.
So that was that email we got today, literally had someone that was concerned that it would be done without any discussion.
Oh,
Right.
really?
Yeah, the
That's
email that came in today, said that that's what they're worried about is
Mhm.
someone could, leaders would just approve it and
Yeah,
communicate
Right.
what.
And
no
that,
told us or
unfortunately,
no.
that's happened in other areas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That it's kind of been too late in the process. So, that's all I have. See, I beat you,
Yeah,
Mr.
the
Sarah.
only one I had on here was the category of the restaurant. It's not permitted in the LI.
Oh, okay, yeah, right.
I mean, that could happen.
Yeah, that could happen. For sure.
Maybe make it conditional or, I think when we, Marty can, correct me if I'm wrong, because he may remember better, but I think when we did this, we were looking at our existing LI. And
Yeah.
we thought like, no one would maybe want to put a restaurant there, but yeah, maybe we revisit that.
Well, some,
LI could
one
change.
point they were looking at doing that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, yeah, it could fit. That's somewhere it could fit. It probably just needs review, you know?
Mhm.
You don't want to say no, outright no, you know?
So just as an accessory or conditional use.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, if there's nothing else from commission members, I would open it up to anyone in the public for comment at this time. Okay, go right ahead. You can state your name.
I was coming because of the data centers.
If you
That's
could,
why I'm here. This is my first time I've ever been to this.
if you could state your name and
Yes.
address, that would be great.
Sure, should I stand or?
If you can, if you'd
Okay.
like. Yeah, yeah.
My name's Lydia Gotras, so I live at 11046 Billingham Avenue in Uniontown, but my kids, we're like in the very northern neighborhood of North Canton School District. So our taxes go to the school district, but, there was rumors for this meeting today, or I should say more concerns with a group of us that like, is this gonna affect the data centers at all? And I liked what you had said that, cause I had wondered, I'm like, I don't see anything about data centers and it's cutting edge and it's something, it's like, we're planning for the future that this would be specifically addressed. And my husband works in a data center in Hudson, and it's a small, tiny, small D data center. It's one building. It's,
Mhm.
No one would know that it's there. But then, like you said, these monstrosities that are being built, that's what people are afraid of. And it's something that this group, it sounds like you're on board, like nobody wants that in their backyard, and you worry about property values, but you worry 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, who's coming after you.
Mhm.
And we've all heard these stories where the city council or the county commissioners, they make these deals behind the scenes, and then it's like surprise on the public. So that's what people are really afraid of. So I personally liked what I'm hearing, that you are planning to personally specifically address it so people can't like wink wink. It's research and development. It's not a data center,
Mhm.
and that it's being something that's conditional so that it can be reviewed and that the public can have a say in something like that. I'm assuming that that's how it would
Yep.
work.
Correct.
That's all.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you.
Come back anytime.
Okay.
Anyone else like to
I'll
speak at this
echo
time?
what she said, Holly Pierpont, City Council, at large. I would love to see that in there as well, because it is hot on everyone's minds. And I've been asked by constituents already about it, and so I said, hey, I'll ask the question tonight. I like the idea of even restricting it as much as we can to NP in those certain categories and leaving it as conditional where you want to. But yeah, I didn't see it in the version that we're repealing, and then I didn't see it in this new edit, and I was like, we probably need to start being ready for that conversation. Mr. Sarah, you had some great things that you pulled up. You must have spent hours going through this. The flagpole thing kind of doesn't sit well with me either. And so, and I know we're saying that some of these things may not impact existing building structures, parcels, whatever. So we've got like the brand new middle school being built. They're gonna put a big flagpole in the front yard, right? I hope that they do.
Mhm.
So I'm assuming it won't impact something like that, but was there a reason why we cut it off so short?
I'm not sure why it is that way in these districts, probably from the past, I would say.
It was always in there.
Yeah,
Was it? Okay, maybe it just carried over.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the opportunity now is change it.
yeah. So yeah, I guess if we could review it and see what's appropriate or tie it to building height even, ratio or something like
What
that.
was the intent there for residential use, or residential flagpoles? It seems as though
Like
it's
in your
more.
front yard.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was probably just
Okay.
carry over from old codes and just didn't
We're
get
seeing more
caught.
businesses come to town now, right, and putting
Yeah.
their patriotism on display, which is fantastic. So I just wanna make sure we're not obstructing that in any way. Is there anything else in here that would impact, like our upcoming North Canton Main Street stuff? Are we mindful of that as we're building this out, or would we come back tomorrow and make adjustments if needed, or am I thinking way too far out?
So there's the distinction between the Main Street Code and the rest of the
Yeah.
commercial codes.
Yeah.
That would be a change for the Main Street District regulations rather than the commercial districts. This is everything that wouldn't be on Main Street.
Okay.
Anything that's on Main Street, and I think a couple areas along Maple are into the Main Street
In that
designations, and
district,
then everything
okay.
else is more in the fringes.
Okay,
And like we touched on, I appreciate that question, Holly, because there are changes here that might make sense on Main Street,
Yeah.
everything from the vape smoke shops to what we were talking about a little bit with mixed use and
Yeah.
how that's conceptualized. And I'd also encourage you or any other member of council or anybody from the public, if you have things on Main Street, to the extent you're aware of what the code says there, that you say, why is this? Or, cause I do think we will take we'll
obviously.
review Main
Yeah.
Street again on the heels of this.
There's a couple tweaks we can do
Right.
on that for sure.
We're so early on still. I
Yeah,
think
so this is the
that's
perfect time to
Okay.
think about that.
There was such an overhaul that Tom, you referred to, remember we called it second century zoning, that's what we referred to it as. When we came up with all the
Mhm.
different Main Street districts.
Yeah. You wanna read it?
No, I'm good.
Okay, anyone else?
Yeah, I do. So Jeff Stocker, also city council at large. So Andy, you're gonna have to speak later too.
That's okay.
You know,
I'll have less questions.
my question is relating also to the data center, and we have specifically codified out cannabis, smoke shop, such and such. That was through ordinance 513. Do we need to do the same with data centers, or is the city, are we allowed to have our planning commission or zoning speak to that? Does it have to be specified or through ordinance or not?
So specifically with cannabis and cannabis-related businesses, that was more of a criminal code, so the 500 chapters of the criminal codes. So it's prohibited code of conduct just because it's specifically related to cannabis and the sale thereof.
Okay.
For the data centers, it would be better served in this chapter. I think the conditional in LI is probably the way to go. 'Cause it keeps it relatively reined in anyways, just because the scale of property and the intended use is built for a larger set of properties, of which we don't have many, if any, other than the existing ones. And with that, another point I wanted to make is this draft was written well before it became part of the public consciousness. So knowing that, I would say we can definitely take those considerations back and as we reach the added process.
It's a very good question, cause just to add to that, yeah, Liam and I were sidebarring here, we were talking about how we started working on this a year ago. And I don't think I'd ever read a newspaper article about a data center a year ago, so it is timely in what you're asking, Jeff. It does kind of get into a philosophical question of do you consider banning a use outright, or do you provide a small area to perhaps confine that use where there, if it were a conditional use, for example, where there's still a lot of process to whether it would be allowed at all. I mean, that's definitely a good question, I think, for city council to take up as well as all of us, but
So,
go on, you were gonna say something else.
well,
Yeah.
to that end, would a data center fit within one of the currently existing categories, or is it its own category? In other words, would a data center have to be spelled out specifically through our zoning and codes, do we feel?
I mean, I'd argue that, it doesn't really fit in our code at all. I don't wanna put words in Eric's mouth, but people that are proposing uses are often pretty good at, arguing it's a use in the schedule of use, or may perhaps even misrepresent it to some degree. Maybe something for us to think about at the city council level, especially in just our ordinances, is, we probably need a good legal definition of what a data center is.
I was just gonna say that,
And,
there's.
So I think that's something
Yeah.
swirling. Yeah, go ahead. Chris.
My answer would be it depends, because if you have a small data center, it's totally different than a large data center, and it's all over the place, so. I think the first step is we have it go through, as, conditional where it gets reviewed, and, yeah,
maybe
there's
there's-
always more teeth we can add to things, later.
Maybe there's condition, maybe for data center in terms of schedule of use, it's confined to limited industrial and as a conditional use, but maybe we need language somewhere in our codes about what a data center is, or data centers in excess of.
Yeah.
There's
25,000 square feet
right, or
whatever.
power, right, I mean, there's so many
Yeah.
ways to review them, and
Yeah.
so many things that happen, you categorize.
Now, with that, I would ask Marty for his input. I would imagine definitionally, we're relegated to whatever's in either revised code or in the Ohio Planning Zoning Code. I would venture to say that they have some sort of working
There's a
definition
lot,
if they are
yeah.
being constructed within the state.
Defined by power consumption.
Yeah.
I personally would not want to see that coming to the planning commission. I think that's something that needs to be an ordinance that goes directly to city council. From what I'm hearing of what's happening currently.
Okay, anyone else in the public? Are you
No,
all
but-
done? Good, okay, anyone else?
There we go.
So Andrew Pratt, also council member at large for the city. Just a couple quick to run down that I think, so hypothetically, the Hoover Company comes back and wants to start making sweepers again, go full industrial. Is that no longer gonna be an option in that area?
No, I believe it would still be cause the Hoover District's its own zoning designation, right?
The Hoover District's actually
Plan-
in a number of different, so it's,
Yeah,
some of it's Main Street, center, and then some of it is limited industrial. So I brought the zoning map. I know you can't see it from here, but we could look at it afterward, but most of the Hoover District that's off of Main Street is limited industrial, and then the frontage on Main Street, oh, yeah, it's up on the street, thank you. Tends to be Main Street Center.
well, and I guess to your question, if someone, let's just say someone would come in, like you said, we're gonna make whatever at it, turn it back into a manufacturing
Right.
facility. I would think they would even try to get it rezoned or something else done.
Yeah,
To
no,
make it work. If it didn't work, they would make it work, right? They would go to great lengths. And I'm sure the administration, if it was an acceptable use, would,
It's not prohibited.
right.
yeah, I should clarify the West Factory itself Now, it's purely Main Street Center, and so
Right.
you could not do an industrial use in it currently. It would have to be rezoned.
Right.
Um, as far as a substation next to someone's house, I guess that would concern me going forward. I wouldn't want one next to my house for, health reasons
Right.
and resale value. Water involved, do we include the water department if we're gonna start looking at any type of data center? I think they should have an input. Flag poles, yeah, I worry about freedom of speech. Like, are we really gonna infringe on that? And how much can we apportion? And then just data center, I like the idea that whether you're big or small, you go up for review. If we're gonna allow them at all. That way nothing is getting through the cracks any way, shape or form. And, creating some type of issue that we can't get out of. And then I guess just in general, what would be the whole logic for why this conversation is even happening in the first place? Why don't we just handle these things on an individual basis as they pop up?
It's a good question.
Well, because it's becoming more popular.
Yeah. One, we have to at least have some guardrails to funnel these things in if they come in, if somebody comes in. To make sure someone's looking at it and it's getting put in the right bucket, I guess, right? There's definitely a delicate balance between regulation and too much regulation, right? I mean, so it's kind of like trying to balance that out so that nothing, like you said, nothing slips through the cracks effectively, right? And I think the intent from administration side on this specifically is that currently we kind of have, we have the center of town, the Main Street district, and then as part of the 21st century kind of zoning, we looked at stepping up from there, so that's stepping up from residential. And currently we kind of go from residential and there's a pretty big step to GBA and GBB. This is trying to bridge that gap a little bit more so that we kind of step up more gradually with uses and heights and distances and, use types. So
Yeah, like to illustrate what you said, Eric, GB, A or B would allow tractor supply, so it's like we kind of go
Yeah.
right from just a single family residential. To,
right. So we're
pretty
trying to
large
avoid some of
retail.
those. What's that going in my backyard type of
I
situation?
just know like this is gonna be very confusing for a lot of people and they're gonna wonder what's really,
Yeah.
Is there something bigger going on we don't understand? What's the
Correct.
logic?
Yeah.
So
Correct.
this is simply putting this into English for, anyone that's looking at something, quickly. What does this really mean?
And Andy, I think you could characterize it honestly and fairly as there's a lot of changes in terms of red lines, but there's not too many real changes to the code. It's more reorganizing, with the exception of some of the things that Liam presented about, this new regulation on smoke shops. And there's some finer points like we're talking about with the flagpole heights and things like that, but it's not, the code is actually not too different than it is now. It's more housekeeping, I would say.
Yeah, and I would say that as far as the use table goes, what was allowed versus not allowed, there's not a lot of changes there, but there's more uses added so that we can steer those businesses into the right categories.
Yeah, I like it because you're kind of simplifying it. I mean, you're literally going from, 5 business districts where you had the industrial chapter 1139 and you're eliminating it and you're taking 5 and you're going to 4. And you're combining the industrial as 1 instead of 2. So I think it really makes a lot of sense. They give you a lot of credit for coming up with this change. And I think for developers and everyone else, it's gonna be a lot easier to understand it.
Definitely something we were going for. I appreciate you saying that, Tom, because, in practice, generally the people using the code are the people trying to build something, and we did want to think about how easy is it for them to understand.
I want to just ask about, you brought up, Andy, about substations, essential services, right? I mean, I know we're home rule, but I think there's some limitations as to what we can do legally as far as we can't say. We can,
Yeah,
we
I'm
can
sure
say
there is.
setbacks,
I
we
just
can
wanted
say
to, yeah,
Fences, we can say everything, but I don't think of a public utility.
right.
It depends who builds it, cause if it's a
Requires.
federal level, like we wanna put a cut into the post office and they won't allow us. As crazy as that is, they won't allow us to do it because it's the federal guidelines. It's the same way with utilities in some way, shape, or form.
I guess I was thinking more, a data center is gonna need more power.
Yeah.
So it's like, if we didn't have the data center, we wouldn't need the power. That's more what I was
Yeah.
thinking.
Sure.
I was just thinking though, on we call, essential services, do we define them like like minor and major? Cause minor is just poles and lift stations and major is like.
Yeah, I didn't go back and look at our definition
Oh,
list,
okay.
so I was just bringing it up for that point of
Yeah,
like the
okay.
definition, what is the definition of it? Do we
Yeah.
have it clear?
Yeah,
Or does that
It
need
might
to
be
be
a
like
little
broken
old.
into two separate uses? I don't
Okay.
know. That's where,
Well, what about towers? That was the other item I had on here.
like cell towers.
that's its
Cell
own,
towers.
yeah, we have that as its own,
That's a separate
That's a whole
wireless
separate,
telecommunications section.
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Typically, the essential services is the utilities, transmission, and distribution of gas, electricity, water, sewage, whatever.
It
that
can also
may
just be poles,
Right,
Yeah.
utility poles.
those are minor, like, and then there's the major.
So, okay, thank you.
Just general
Yep.
questions. Should I-
No, thank you
I
for your
have-
comments, yeah. Does anyone else from the public like to?
Just one other thing.
Yes.
excuse me. So I was just thinking, you said there's like a small data center already in our community, maybe? No?
You said poles.
The reason I was asking, I thought, like my husband for Allstate, they're going to be switching a lot to AI. So their data centers over years to come, their capacity, like their electric needs, their water needs are gonna increase.
Mhm.
Their location may not change, but
Correct.
it's gonna be here. So I just wondered, that the other thing I would worry is if, like, it's a small data center is approved, so they get in, but then 10 years down the road, they're switching to AI at this point, but they're already in our community.
Sure.
And then it's going to, like, how, it's just something I was wondering, like, how would that work? Like, since they're here, would they already be like, yeah, that's fine, or they would have to ask for approval to update those?
That's a great that's a great question, yeah, I mean, there would have to be some mechanisms in the
There
definition.
is a threshold of when it's redefined by power. So if they increased it to X amount of level, then I'm sure it'd have to go through additional regulations, but it wouldn't hurt for us to do a heavy lift on doing our own code for it. It doesn't, the problem, I'll give you a brief lecture. So Ohio is a net exporter of energy. So any data centers do provide some sort of drain on our grid. However, we currently don't have one around here in this area, Stark County. There are some places in Stark County that have water usage issues. We are not one of them. But we also don't have the space for one. So we're not at a high risk for any of that happening. I think for now, covering it is as needed and reviewed, puts any worries to rest temporarily, but I do think we need to define it. And there's some places that will come in and say, we do have a strain on our electric, you're going to have to drill at a substation, and we do have a strain on our water supply, you're going to have to put a recycling unit in, and noise, there's all sorts of different things that need to be regulated on that, so.
Yeah, I could say with a straight face, given our zoning and land use and available land, I think the odds of a massive data center in the city of North Canton are
Correct.
extremely low.
Right.
But it's a good thing to be proactive about and think about, so it's a good discussion.
In the, so yeah, in the immediate, the conditional designation in LI would be the way to go. More broadly on establishing our own definitions and regulations thereof is a broader legal question for.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sorry, what was your first name again?
Lydia,
Lydia, and your address was in,
11046 Billingham, Northwest of
okay,
Uniontown.
so I'm so glad you're here, and that's wonderful. I also want to encourage you, you're in Lake Township, that you might want to show with, at the Lake Township
Yes.
trustee meetings
Yes.
too, because one in your backyard would be them, it would not be us.
Yes.
So, and there is more land up there, and there is, like we say, we're limited, we're a lot more landlocked in Uniontown.
There are a lot more. Cover all your bases.
So,
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
definitely shove it there too.
Great point. Okay, if there's no other comments from the public, nothing else from the administration or planning commission?
I think the intent of these changes is good. Exclusive of anything regarding regulation of data centers, that this is a draft document that needs to be tabled versus approved part and parcel.
Right.
That just needs to be fine-tuned and re-presented.
Is that a motion, Mr. Mahasen?
That would be a motion.
Okay.
Do we have a second for that?
We have a motion and a second to table this for review/edits and then to bring it back forward. Okay.
So procedurally speaking, since this is a council item.
Yep.
This would be submit with comments, approve with comments that council would then consider, and they would have to make the amendments.
Thank you, Bob.
So it would be this will still get a public hearing and then go to council for 3 more readings, at which point they could make those edits. So as to not restart us all over again, it would be, you could move it forward like council, 3 of them are in the room. We can take those comments and put them forward for future edits, let council debate that. Or alternatively, vote it down and we can send it back to council and restart and resubmit it to planning commission, rather than tabling here. You could either send it back to council for review and resubmittal, or advance it and let them edit it as they see moving forward.
Okay, yeah. So your choices are either vote now or vote yes with comments.
Would you like to rescind the motion or how would you like to?
Would it go back to council with the clarifications on the modifications?
If you guys would like to see it again, I would say vote to just send it back to council for comments and resubmittal.
Then that's what I would propose.
Okay.
Okay. So it would go to council and it will edited and it would come back to planning commission. Okay. Is that the motion, Mr. Mahasen?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Sarah?
I'll pull my second.
I can pull your second. Okay. I will second that the document be edited, reviewed and edited, and then brought back to planning commission. We'll do a roll call vote.
Mr. LePage,
Yes.
Mr. Sarah,
Yes.
Mr. Mahelson,
Yes.
Mr. Dapes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much for everyone for their comments and discussion on that. I believe that is it for this evening. If there's no other comments, questions, I would have entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion to adjourn.
I will second.